Good evening, everybody. I'm here with Darren Sher from here, who's here today to talk about Sher watches. He's a lifelong member of the watch community and well known for other ventures. But the Sher watches is a new venture. So why don't you just give us an introduction to it, please?
Yeah, sure. So where it started really was I had dyslexia as a kid, and I really struggled to tell the time on an analog watch. So for a long time, I wore like Casios and so on, and it's only through the passion of watches that I taught myself as an adult. But then when I had kids, and I noticed that my son is struggling, my daughter was struggling, they too have dyslexia. I thought I need to try and combine my passion for watches and try and solve this problem as a parent as well. So I just thought back to what it was that I found difficult. So the things I found difficult was once the hour hand went past the hour number, was actually knowing, is it pointing to the next one or the previous one? I couldn't figure it out. And then also the minutes, trying to figure out what minute it's on was really difficult. So I knew I had to design a dial that would segment the hour so it's very clear exactly which hour it's in, and that we needed a full minute track. So I just came up with a bunch of designs on a bit of paper and kept showing my son and my daughter and asked them, what time is it? What time is it? And we kind of finally got to a winning combination. And yeah, it was quite like a light bulb moment. My kids were really excited. They really seemed to gain independence when they could tell the time. So I knew I was onto something. And my son had also, I think he was about 8 or 9 at the time. He didn't want to wear the kids' watches that I'd bought him before. He found them too babyish, he would say, or, we tried Flick Flack and they wouldn't really last very long. So I knew as well as the dial, it needed to be a more grown up looking watch. It needed to have grown up specs. So the watch is 100-meter water resistance, sapphire crystal, stainless steel case, and just something a bit more grown up that they'd be quite confident wearing at school. So that kind of inspired the design of going for sort of a downsized field watch, if you like. So that's the quick whistle stop tour.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's a really it's sort of the almost the perfect reason to make a watch, is you're really fulfilling a gap. And as I feel compelled to say, all watches, start off as tool watches,
Yeah,
and then eventually they become jewelry. So the whole history of the industry is people filling a gap with a clock, and then they made clocks smaller, and then they made wristwatches, but they had to solve all the technical challenges to make them useful first before anything else. And so it's great to hear of a new niche you've spotted and are filling. Um, so
yeah.
So how long has it taken? Talk us through the journey of actually having that idea and that excitement and getting the first prototype and so on.
Yeah, so it was probably from when I sketched the final design, it was probably just over a year until I had sort of the prototypes and then the order in for the final models. The hardest bit, although it was much easier for me, was really finding a manufacturer that you can trust and that's, follows good practice and everything else. I knew it had to be affordable, so China was the most realistic option. Fortunately, because I do a lot in the industry already and know a lot of people, I reached out to another micro brand. So I don't know if you guys know Taya at Radcliffe. He's done the La Dome watch and various others. And he'd often share his trips to China online and share videos of the factory and the people working there. And I could see the standards were great. So I reached out to him and said, "Do you mind sharing who you work with?" And he was very accommodating and put me in touch with his team. And that really fast tracked finding the right supplier. And I knew the quality was there. So I didn't have like a lot of people to try and start a brand, go to multiple manufacturers, get multiple prototypes produced, and that kind of adds to the whole process. So that really fast tracked that side of it. But it still took about a year of getting the prototypes made back and forth on the design, and then once you finally find the design, it's a few months to really get the main production product ready.
And yeah, tell us a bit about that because you know judging quality like that is quite hard. So do
Yeah.
you have experience in product design or manufacturing, or are you basing it off your collecting experience?
Well, sort of a bit of both. So, in my day job, I work in software engineering and digital product management. So, I'm used to digital products and but not necessarily physical products. But yeah, I think definitely my passion for watches and knowledge of watches helped. So when I got the product, looking at how it's been brushed and polished and how it's generally been finished, was things that I knew to look for in watches. So that passion side definitely helped.
And I mean, I think when we talked about it back first time in March, maybe at the Watchmakers Day, um,
Mm.
I think my first question was just maybe a bit rude, but like, how are you going to price it? Um, so talk us through that debate and obviously really wanting that quality. And as you said, you know, it's not plastic. You wanted steel, you wanted sapphire, you want it to be tough. So yeah, just talk us through the debate and were there any trade-offs?
Yeah, I mean the pricing was probably the most difficult bit because admittedly the margins aren't particularly high on this watch, but I knew it had to be an affordable price because you're talking about a kid's watch, right? And I kind of asked around, and fun enough, it's when I see Andrew McCutcheon a few times. I'm always in the Discovery Studio, so early days I kind of shared the project with him, and he said to me straight up, "Whatever you do, keep it under £100." So I knew that I couldn't pass that ceiling because I think the minute you go over £100 is really a lot, an investment for a kid. Kids can lose things and so on. And then I kind of took inspiration a bit from Christopher Ward in terms of their three times model. So I thought, well, let me try and keep the cost price so that I'm at least at a three times, and don't hit 100. So there were probably a few things where I had to say to myself, I need to stop. I can't, I can go crazy with this design and add too much. But the most important thing was the case, the integrity, that it's waterproof and everything else. I could have gone to town on the dial and added applied markers or done a sandwich dial and, really, really gone for it. But I had to be really conscious, yeah, of the pricing. So there's definitely not the kind of margin you would typically see on maybe adult watches. But for me, genuinely, I wasn't necessarily in this for like a money making thing. It had to, at the very least, wash its face, make enough of a profit that I don't have a cash flow issue when I want to order more items and so on. So yeah, I mean that's it.
And this is just to explain it. So in the watch world, we have many young watch brands, and they all sell direct to consumer,
Mm.
and that's to keep the price low. But what that means is they don't have any margin to then give up to a retailer, because retailers, they need to pay their costs, and so in the watch industry, a retailer is perhaps used to getting 30% of the sales price, sometimes more, sometimes less, but an average of 30 something percent. So it doesn't sound like you've got room for a retail margin at the moment, but have you had discussions with retailers? Is there enough of an interest in the product to find a common ground?
So yes, I mean the great news is the Sher watch is now available at the Discovery Studio
Mhm.
in central London,
Yeah.
which is by Oxford Circus. So, I mean that was a big decision because I'm making very little, if anything, with the watches I sell there. But the most important thing to me is, I've seen the value of the Discovery Studio is that you can actually finally get hands-on with these pieces. And I thought it's really important that people can see it. And a lot of families come into the Discovery Studio, and it's an opportunity for kids to really get hands-on with it. So the most important thing for me right now is getting the brand out there. And most businesses will spend on marketing and advertising and so on. And I see the margins that I'm having to eat into by having the Discovery Studio, I see as another marketing opportunity and getting the brand out there. So happy to absorb that cost, if you like.
Yeah, that's great news. It is a great space for any watch enthusiast, and you know, they have a really great range of watch brands for people to go and look at, and the staff are great. So No, that is fantastic, and absolutely part of growing a business is investing in your distribution, which is what that is.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so does anyone have any questions you'd like to jump in with here?
Yeah, well, just right off the top, I mean, hi, I think it's a really good looking watch, right? Very, very striking, unusual, and good looking watch in and of itself, regardless of the fact that the design is functionally useful and it's addressing a very particular kind of, I suppose, like visual mechanic. I'm probably not using the right words there, but I suppose one question I might have is, and maybe it's further down the road, but I'm wondering if you've considered an adult version of it, or even a version of it that you just wanted to produce regardless of any sort of um, other aspect of its dial
Yeah.
language, if you know, because I just think it's very striking, good looking watch anyway. So I'd just like to say that right off the bat and ask you if you've thought of that yet.
Yeah, thank you very much. And as it happens, I mean, there's the kids one, and then we've got an adult prototype, if you like, which initially I planned to bring both out because I thought anyway having a parent and child sort of pairing would be quite
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
But I was really surprised at when we did bring it out that I've had a load of adults saying, "Could you do an adult version?" because they like the design. The tricky thing is that cash flow problem because certainly with the adult watch. I had initially thought I'd go for an automatic movement, but now possibly considering a mecha quartz type thing, so you get the benefits of the smooth tick and so on. But it's where I've now got demand for the kids' watch. When I then have to place the next order, you're talking of hundreds and hundreds of units that I have to order. Then I'm like, do I keep just trying to grow the kids' watch element, or do I kind of risk and then invest a lot of the cash into the adult watch? So it's a real chicken or the egg thing.
That is a really interesting
Yeah.
question, isn't it? Because I think in designing this watch for kids, you've actually designed a really cool looking watch.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Anyway, and I think it's a question that you kind of go, well, I don't know. I mean, maybe I accept this gift from the universe or
Yeah.
something and lean into the other side of it. Yeah, but yeah, I really like it. I think it's a beautiful looking watch, and I love the story behind it as well. That's really important.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot. And I mean, as it happens, we are working on the next project, which will be an adult watch. So you may or may not know, I also run a podcast called That Watch Podcast, and we're looking to do a limited edition watch initially for that. And the hope is with that can then help fund sort of other ranges of watches. And I have thought about could the style design become like the design language of the Sher watch and kind of live through, and whether in adult watches, it might be you play with the design and have like, guilloche patterns that segment the dial rather than just sort of colors. So looking at different options, but trying to find ways because the kids' watch isn't necessarily helping fund the business because the margins are quite small and it's more of a passion project. But hopefully with things like a limited edition podcast watch that can help kind of put more money into other projects and cater more on the adult market.
Yeah, I think it's worth just highlighting that from my perspective. So we all see these young and micro brands grow, and a lot of people don't appreciate just how much cash you have to send overseas to get those runs of watches. So if you have a little bit of success, you're then in a genuine dilemma in how many to order next and how am I going to pay for it? And that is just business. That's how business works.
Yeah.
But it's great to hear from you that you're going through that right now. Is what's the decision? I've got all these ideas, but what's realistic? What's better for building the brand? Because ultimately, you don't want to disappoint anyone either. You want to have watches
Yeah.
in people's hands as soon as they want them. And I've spoken to a lot of different micro brand owners over the last few years, as in the privileged position I'm in as running the club and meeting them at shows and our shows and such like. And people have very different views on how you should do it, actually, and how you should sell it. So Yeah, I mean, I know you do already, but it's worth talking to the other
Yeah, I
brand
mean,
successful brand founders about what they've tried and what they like and don't like about the different options.
yeah, I mean, it's, just to put it into perspective on that, the minimum order quantity generally is at best 300 minimum order quantity. And if you're doing an adult watch that costs 250 to 300 at cost, you're talking about 90 grand that you need to find. And yes, there are ways you can do it. So with the kids' watch, I did kind of initially do a pre-order window, but because it takes 3 months to produce, I kind of had to commit anyway early to the manufacturer before we'd covered the cost of the initial manufacture. But even the prototypes, you're talking thousands and thousands of pounds, and you have to get the prototypes done in order to show people the end product of what they might be investing in if you do a pre-order window. So it is, I'm trying to do it organically and build up funds in the business so we can do more. But Ed, that's great, and great to hear that you like the design. There will definitely be an adult watch at some point
I
with
mean,
the same sort of
you
design.
mentioned you mentioned the design language, Darren. It is. I mean, just looking at what you have now, it is almost like a template for, I mean, I can picture it all, right? I can picture many, many different variations, color, texture, material, I can sporty versions, high end. I can just see that fitting with that black and white template that you've got. It's just yeah, it's ripe, I think. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think you've done the well, apart from all the money, which I know that's not my thing. I know nothing about that. I wouldn't know even where to start. But I, from a design point of view, that's kind of what I do for a living as well. And I think you've done the hard bit already. You've come up with something very, very interesting and a very kind of, I suppose, like label kind of platform within which to you push in loads of different directions. So, and I really do think that's one of the hardest things that an independent must do in order to differentiate themselves.
Yeah.
And yeah, so really well done on that.
No, it's good to have the encouragement. Thanks.
Yeah, because I mean, one of my questions is, you've gone for a full loom dial, and some people might not know this, but you can get loom in every shade now. Cost different amounts of money, but you can actually get loom in almost any shade, any color you can think of. You can now get it luminous, and then you can get loom that is one color when it's not loom uh,
Yeah.
glowing, but it's a different color when it's glowing. So especially with children in mind, that seems like an obvious next step. Is that at all within the budget for these watches, or not?
Yeah, I mean, well, not so much on the colored loom, but we do have already now some prototypes that we're working on of different colors. So instead of the gray segments on the dial, it might be blue or purple or pink or green. So that's kind of the color we're playing with. The loom part, I mean, that's a lot of the cost on the Swatch was again getting the loom right and the process to produce a full loom dial that you can print on top of. There was a lot of back and forth, and I think. The first run, a third of the dials that were printed had to be binned because they just didn't quite come out. So now on the second run of order, I've been told the costs have to go up now to account for that. So yeah, playing with different colored looms, maybe, maybe.
Yeah, that's another thing, actually. It's good that you highlight that because, again, people don't realize this that a lot of watch components fail. So, yeah, the what I was going to say was in the industry in general, still after hundreds of years of development of mechanization in the industry and the incredibly sophisticated things that watchmakers big and small can take advantage of now, like a standard parts runs, whether it's wheels, pinions, dials, hands, will have high failure rates within that batch. And there is no way around that. The manufacturers don't go, oh, don't worry, we've tweaked a few things, and the next batch, 100% of them will be fine, and we'll send them over. What actually happens is the brands have to work out what the expected failure rate is going to be for their suppliers, take that into account, and then do the quality control. Um, and it sounds mad, but that is how the industry works. Because we're dealing with such small parts and we're dealing with such different parts for different
So
movements.
what are you saying that if I ordered 1,000 of a thing, for each of those, once I received them would fail, and I just have to accept that? I can't punt that back to the supplier. Wow.
Yeah, in effect, within reasonable grounds, yeah, that is how it works. So the QA is on your assembler, and you have to then have an assembler who's capable of doing that for you. So that's
Okay.
why, again, it makes so much sense to buy stock movements. So if you buy a movement from one of the big movement families, movement companies, um, then you know there's already been millions made, and millions are being made every week.
Yeah, I mean that's part of the manufacturing. It goes through a whole QA process, and thankfully they spotted it, and that's another thing. You want to find a manufacturer that has a really good QA process because I've heard some real horror stories as well. Sorry about that. Before, as we're talking about failure rates, my laptop restarts.
I mean, for those people who know some of the British micro brands, well, there's some stories of things not turning up, things turning up, the whole batch is broken. And that's just all part and parcel of making a watch, building a watch, and delivering it. It's there's a lot of steps have to go right.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyone else have a question at this stage? Go ahead, Michael, Mikhail.
Thank you very much. Hi guys. Hi Darren. Um,
Oh yeah.
Nice to join you guys in this conversation. I would have, well, I mean, the watch when I saw it, I think it's as Ed mentioned, I think it's really really slick, very easy to understand, and know, I'm also thinking to getting one for my daughter, but she's 3 at the moment, so maybe it will be good for shock testing. But if not, maybe further down when she grows up. But my question would be regarding the collaboration spectrum that we see now with so many brands that are, very keen to working together to reaching audiences and sharing products, or I don't know, maybe know-how at some point. Have you considered this further down the line? Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for the question. So the irony is that our first collaboration is going to kind of be sort of with myself. So as mentioned, the adult watch we're releasing will be a limited edition watch for our podcast that we run, and it kind of has a humorous style, and for people that listen to the podcast, plays on a lot of the humor around the podcast. Um, and I think it's a great idea to do those kind of collaborations because the podcast itself has quite a big audience, and it just helps you sort of leverage and get greater reach to reach a brand. I mean, it also happens the podcast listeners were asking for us to do some kind of limited edition. So I thought, well, I've got a brand now, we might as well do it. Um, but in terms of working with other brands, I'd love to do it at some point. I mean, I had a really good Mike from Christopher Ward. I met him, I think, during a Loco press event. And he was really fascinated with the kids' watch we're doing. I think his background, he used to run the early learning center, so he had experience of teaching devices and so on. So I'd love to do some work with Christopher Ward. They actually going to be featuring the Sher Kids Watch in the next Loop magazine that comes out. So I've been really impressed at how supportive, and certainly the British microbrand watch industry is. Like every brand is just there for each other. They're really supportive. I've become quite good friends with the guys at Bokken, the guys at Elliott Brown, and everyone's just so supportive. So, I wouldn't dismiss it, definitely. But perhaps I need to be a bit further down the road before I collaborate with a bigger brand.
Yeah, no, it sounds great, very exciting. Um,
In terms of that road, then, Darren, is your roadmap? I mean, how long is it at the moment? What's your next steps along that?
Yes. So I'll use, I guess, our next project. So I'll use the podcast watch that we're doing. We just finalized designs, and I've just put confirmation in to get the prototypes done. It's going to be at least 3 months until we receive the prototypes. Once the prototypes arrive, I have to hope they're exactly as I was expecting and perfect, and that we don't need to make changes. All being well, I'll probably then have to set up a pre-order launch window, and hopefully we get enough money to cover the kind of the order, minimum order quantity order we need to do. So assume that's a month. So we've got 3 months for the prototypes, a month to do fundraising, and then it's another 3 months, I guess, from when we instruct production. So we're at least 7 months away from the next, a different model coming out, if you like. With the kids' watches, we're now at a point where we're having to place kind of our next order because the first batch has done really well. I am thinking about doing some of the different colors for the next round. So there will be some difference there, but a color change generally on the dial is quite an easy change. I might need to get some prototype dials for that, but yeah, at least 7 months away from the next one. And then the plan is with the limited edition dive watch we're doing, which is an adult watch, is that will become the base of our next watch, if you like. So we'll be doing, this is where I need to think about, do I carry on that design language with the segmented dial and everything else, but presented within a dive watch? So at least then it's not going to be as much of a wait once the limited edition dive watch goes out, that we can then have our next kind of product range, if you like. But yeah,
And
it's a lot of waiting.
in the meantime, you've got to put your own children to work selling the watch ahead of Christmas.
Yeah, my son's the top salesman. So we recently did the trade show in Birmingham, and he sold all the watches that went out that day. But that's been a really wonderful part of this because it's been something for me and my son to really bond over. He's been learning business. So I've been teaching about profit margin. He then asks, well, can I earn commission from that profit margin for each watch I sell? So he's getting really savvy with all of this and really learning business along the way. So if that's all I get out of this experience, that's been invaluable.
Well, next time I see him, I'll tell him it's the industry standard's 10%.
Yeah, well, he did, and then he asked about a bonus if he reaches a certain number, so he knows his stuff.
Um, well, yeah, hopefully he'll be able to join us in Manchester in a few months' time.
He will be. He will definitely be there. That's for sure. He loved it. He had a really good time.
Yeah, great. No, it'd be great to have you there. Definitely looking forward to that and seeing the response on the day as well. It's it's part of the fun of doing the shows. It's seeing how it's not just the attendees, getting to see so many great brands, but it's also see how the reaction people are having to the brands and talking to all the exhibitors over the day is also a huge amount of fun when we do the shows. So yeah, really looking forward to Manchester coming up in November.
Yeah.
Any other questions to jump in with?
Not really a question, but I saw the watch at the Discovery Studio a couple of weeks ago with my kids, and they loved it. And I think you've already covered what I was going to ask about different colors and stuff there, because obviously they're attracted to more colorful things to young girls. So no, I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with next.
Yeah, no, thanks. I mean, it's funny when we got the first prototypes, I had a purple, a blue, and a green, and the black and grey. And I experimented amongst a bunch of kids, bearing in mind they were around 9 or 10 years old, so a bit older, and every single kid picked the black and white version, if you like. So I thought, well, for a first run, because with the minimum order quantity, I'd have to order a minimum of 300 of just the black and white. Then I'd have to order a minimum of 100 of one color and then 100 of another color. So it just was getting too much of a risk. But definitely, I think I've seen there's enough demand and getting a lot of requests for different colors. So I'm fairly certain that the next round will at least have maybe a pink or a blue or a blue and a purple or something like that.
Yeah, no, they really liked it, and they were good at the Discovery Studio. They were showing them the fully loomed dial, and and all of that. So yeah, it was really good. And there's that event on Friday.
Yeah.
Um, Try to make that.
Yeah, no, it'd be great to see you in person. Please do.
And maybe tell us a bit more about your collecting journey. So, what's sort of driven this passion and then launching a podcast and now a brand and who knows what next.
Yeah, we'll do. I think Ed Hawkins might have had a question before I move away from the show stuff, but I can go on to
Oh yeah,
that.
go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, it was just a very quick one. When you, this is a silly question, but I assume your children were the road testers for your for their watches.
Yeah.
What did you get them to do to road test it? Because I assume when you manufacture adult watches, there's this whole industry of crazy tests. And did you manage to come up with some similarly crazy tests for your children?
Well, I mean, the best and most effective test with kids is just wear it to school for a good amount of time. And so, yeah, my son, who'd been through a few Casios that got cracked or bashed at school, I was like, right, it was one of the prototypes, which bear in mind, even though it's a little kid's watch, the one prototype cost close to 2 grand. So I was strapping a 2 grand watch to my wrist, but it was a key part of it. So, given I was raising the pre-orders for a few months, I thought it's a good opportunity for him to wear it, and he wore it to school. I think for 2 solid months, he never took it off, whether he was doing sports activities, swimming, going on holiday, you name it. And by the end of the 2 months, I mean, it just looked immaculate, compared to his Casios, where often the plastic crystal would be scratched and so on. So it was just everyday life was the main test. I mean, he would be showering in it, bathing in it, swimming in it, you name it. So yeah, real
Cool.
life.
Great. No, thank you.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, so Hamish, on my watch collecting journey. So yeah, on Instagram, I'm Diverse Watch Collector, is my handle. Diverse because I'm not stuck to any particular brand. So I collect multiple brands, everything from some of the larger brands to, even the British micro brands and other micro brands. So my journey, I mean, it started when I was about 11 years old and I saw the Casio databank and I was obsessed with it. And my parents did a reward chart where if I behaved myself for 3 months, I'd get this Casio databank. And that's kind of when I was, and even as a kid, I mean, I think by the time I was 14, I had about 20 watches. I was just obsessed. And it was just all sorts of crap. It was just, I'd see anything. If I liked it, I'd buy it. They were far from expensive pieces. And then that just sort of evolved. And I think it's like many during COVID, where things really ramped up because I was then doing a lot more research into watches. I taught myself watchmaking. So as a side hobby, I buy old broken vintage watches and restore them. So I've got a whole workbench at home and everything else. And that's unfortunately where I discovered Instagram and in terms of for watch content. And that was a slippery slope because you just get taunted with these amazing watches on a daily basis. So although I had sort of a sizable collection before, it just kind of ramped up from COVID onwards. Yeah, and then it's through watch collecting that I ended up meeting Matt, who's one of the co-presenters on the podcast. I think it was when the moon swatch craze was happening. I was on holiday in South Africa, and a swatch store there happened to have loads of moon swatches. So I picked one up, and then we met for me to give me his watch once I got back, and then got invited to a social, and that's when I met G, who's also on the podcast. And yeah, probably about a year into our friendship, it was like, let's just record these conversations that we're having in the pub when we meet, and that's kind of how that side started. And it's then led into setting up my own watch brand. So it's all quite bizarre.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I mean, we were on the Watch Collectors Club to hear people's stories. I think you might be the first to have had so many watches so young.
Possibly.
That's quite an interesting one. Because I always wore a watch, but it was in sequence. I had a the Snap-on one, a Swatch. I had the a Timex Iron Man that I loved, and then I had an Oakley watch which I loved.
Yeah.
For my 18th birthday, my parents kindly bought me a Tag Heuer. Um, but so I didn't ever have more than one, but I didn't take them off.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like, I mean, when I was a kid, I'd collect all sorts, whether it was like pins or whether it was key rings, you name it.
Yeah.
So my son's the same. He's got like pop figures and all these different things that he collects. But yeah, it was, I mean, I had honestly, the stuff I had was, I mean, one of them was like, it looked like a gun and you'd pull the trigger and it would open and reveal the dial, or, but there were the general Swatch watches and all sorts. I just loved experimenting and saving up at any opportunity I could.
Yeah, it's great. Well, and now you get the excitement. So one of the interesting things about watch collectors is a lot of watch collectors like to buy all the different colors of the same watch, uh,
Yeah,
which
that's
I
it.
would never do, but lots of people do that. So, so now you can make a load of colors of a watch, and kids can collect them.
Yeah, I'll follow the Tudor lesson and release a special edition pink. Just go for the Miami colors. I'll be good.
It is interesting with colors, isn't it? Because just coming back to the kids watch again, and in terms of colors, it's for instance, you could consider doing something along the lines of having an Avengers range. Let's say I'm not proposing in any way an official collaboration. Just some sort of nod to things like the Avengers, and then each one would be colors that would be very easily identifiable with the Hulk or Spider-Man. And yeah, I mean, that would be very, very easy to do. And I think with the layout of the dial, it would allow the color distribution to be able to do that very easily. But I suppose there is a question around, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on what you think of, I suppose, positioning of if it's on a scale between a grown-up watch or a watch still for a child, but something that's not disposable or casual or fashion, I suppose, fast fashion. And then on the other end of the scale is something that you want them to consider slightly more longer term, slightly more permanent than just something that they would pick up and throw away in a month or two. And then within that scale, the more kind of kiddie, I guess, the colors are, maybe the more easier it would be for them to not consider it in a way that you may want them to. So I don't know if that ramble has kind of explained my
No, I
thinking
mean
properly at all, but you
that
know what I
was
mean?
that. No, no, totally. And that was the thought process with the first watch. Is I wanted something that an adult would wear, so that it doesn't matter whether the child is 5 or 16. They could wear the watch. I actually have a few customers that have bought the watch, adults, and are wearing it. I think too often for kids, we think they might want the bright colors or things, but really they kind of want what mum's got or what dad's got. And I saw that through my son. I mean, I had a watch for him, which is another great kids watch. It's by a brand called Block, which I'd bought for him. But he felt, it was plastic. It was too babyish. He said he didn't want to wear it. So I thought the kind of bright, colourful kids watches were well catered for. That it needed to be something a bit more grown up that could grow up with the child, and they may even wear again as an adult. But that said, even some of the colours that I'm experimenting with, it could still be worn by an adult watch, by an adult. Sorry. So that definitely played a part. Is I thought the kids' watches is very well catered for in terms of the cheap kind of 20-30 quid watches you might get on Amazon. Obviously not quite Patek passing from generation to generation, but certainly something that has a longer shelf life.
But then I suppose on the flip side, I am constantly surprised when adults spend so much money on swatches, for instance. Some of the most, well, I don't want to be disrespectful to them because I have a lot of respect for the brand, but very, very gaudy. What on the face of it might appear to be a child's design, and so many adults really, really resonate and respond to it. So it's hard to predict, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, the great thing with Swatch is they've got such variety, and a lot of it is almost like art. That it's a great way for people to express themselves through the watches they wear. Uh, but obviously, Swatch are kind of a huge company that can afford that sort of volume. So I need to be more considered in terms of the pieces I release. You've got to be so careful that you don't take a too big a risk, and then you're sitting with all this stock. So trying to sort of tread cautiously, and playing it safe to some extent with the first release.
Yeah, I think it's so easy to have lots of ideas, and that's why it's been helpful this evening to hear some of the trade-offs,
Yeah.
and uh, yeah, the it's built. You want to build your brand, you want to build your identity, but you want to do that in the right way. Um,
Mm.
and yeah, it was funny actually. I've just been as you're talking, just looking at the watch there behind you, and what I noticed is I just hadn't noticed it before. Is of course the numerals are off center.
Yeah.
The 6 and the 12 aren't exactly in the middle. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah,
None of them
because
are. All the numbers are off center, right? They're at
yeah.
the beginning of the hour, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It essentially marks where the 12 starts. So, and again, that's probably why I found it confusing as a kid, is you center the 12, but if the hand's near the one of the 12, in my mind, it would be like it's 12 o'clock. But actually, it's not made it to 12 yet. So I knew I had to kind of shift the numbers off. So it was actually made a bit more sense, if you like. I mean, the good news is that now, if I show one of my normal adult watches to my son, he can now just about make out the time, which he could never do before. So it's obviously he's getting used to that habit and the positions of the hands that it is helping him learn. Um, and something that's worth noting, and I only discovered this after I launched the watches. I thought this was a very niche thing, but I've since seen articles in the news that schools are now having to remove analog clocks from exam halls for teenagers because they can't tell the time on them, and they're replacing them with digital watches. So I thought, God, this is more of a problem than I even realized. And I think because of smart devices and everything out there, even though the kids are maybe taught how to tell the time on an analog watch, and I think when we were younger, it's that repetition and wearing one when you really start to learn. You can be taught the basics, but unless you're wearing a watch every day, it's not this habit or this routine that you kind of build. So there's I've had people say I should produce massive clocks for schools, but haven't quite got there yet. But it's an idea.
Yeah, it's a fair point, and the issue is pretty simple. It's that many children, and probably most children actually worldwide, don't now live in a house with an analog clock of any kind or an analog watch of any kind. Um,
Yeah,
so it's exactly that. They might have lessons at a certain age at primary school, but they don't go anywhere to see them. Um,
exactly.
because technology's moved on. Very To be very clear, it's not sort of
Yeah.
a travesty that
Perhaps it's us holding on to these
these
just
we
yeah,
most people on this call probably grew up with very very noisy and annoying ticking clocks were a large part of people's lives. And you go to grandparents' houses or something, and they'd have a very very loud clock. You couldn't really believe how loud it was, and noisy clocks in schools or other institutions. Um, yeah, but that's all almost all gone now.
yeah.
Um, just as we finish up, then, has anyone got a final question? Either on the watches or anything else?
Well, I would just like to add to what we were saying that I think in hindsight, maybe that's why I try to steer clear from, the Moser watches. They're beautiful. I like them, but when there's absolutely nothing, and that personally for me it's a little bit hard, to tell the time. I only know that, 12, 6, and 9. And it does tricky, at least as an adult, that. And then I also wanted to add a question if how are you navigating these, the tariff situation, with the US market, and is your market more Europe based or UK based, or how is it moving forward with the US? And thanks.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question because there's another tariff that's just come into effect, or that's coming into effect at the end of August. That I thought it just so luckily because final assembly and so on is in the UK, it's seen as coming from the UK, so that the highest tariff would be going into the US, which is my biggest market at the moment. Is would be 10%, but I was once I started shipping stuff, I realized actually the US don't charge any import duties for anything that's under $800. But I just received a notification that the US are scrapping that, and there will be no minimum from the 31st of August. So I benefited slightly for some time, but thankfully it's only 10%, and it's that cost unfortunately gets paid by the end consumer. However, Donald Trump might like to market it in terms of who pays for tariffs. Um, but thankfully, it's only 10% coming from the UK. I mean, I think if I was hit with what the Swiss market is hit with of 39%, I mean it's crazy.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting what lies ahead for the next, I don't know, 1 to 3 years here in Switzerland.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm
Uh,
happy to hear, that it's just 10.
Yeah, thanks.
I got a question for you. How are you getting on with your Zenith White Surfer? Are you wearing it on the rest of
Yeah,
the
I've got it on now. So,
Very smart?
oh, I love it. I love this thing. I'm obsessed with it.
Cool.
But yeah, the summer watch to me, this is the watch of 2025. So yeah,
How
absolutely love
long
it.
have
Nice.
you had it? Now, that's the question. How long have you had it?
I got it on release, so I was fortunate enough to go to the Zenith launch event at the Discovery Studio. So the minute Time and Tide did, where I think they invited some members to see it early. So the minute I saw it, I had no intention of getting it until I put it on my wrist. So had to sell a bunch of watches to fund it. But yeah, got it on the launch night.
When was that? Was it recently?
I think it was about
Cool.
3, 4 weeks ago, something like that.
See, that's what I was
Yeah.
trying to get to there. Do you know what I mean? Of course you're
The
loving it. Of
honeymoon is
course,
still
yeah,
strong.
yeah, 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 yeah. We know it. This is a safe space. It's okay. It's gorgeous to watch.
Yeah, perhaps we
Absolutely.
should do a catch up in a year and see. But look, I'm a big Zenith fan in general, so I've also got the Night Surfer 2. I recently got a vintage Zenith Rainbow Flyback, which is was
Nice.
commissioned by the French Air Force, that watch. But I love the Zenith story. I think Zenith are massively undervalued, considering that they are pretty much full vertical manufacture. You know, their movements are second to none. I think Zenith.
Their clasps, however, are a little bit rubbish, right?
Yeah.
I have a Chronomaster Sport, and
Ah.
I love it. I absolutely love it. But that clasp, man, it's a figure killer. It really is. It's death trap.
Yeah, I don't have. I've only got the butterfly class on the Defy models, but yeah, and it's amazing the prices you can get Zenith on the secondary market. But I think it's a great brand. It's amazing how many brands get clasps wrong, though. It's quite amazing.
And
We
I don't know. I mean, if you're, have you, I have heard some rumblings that there might be a refresh coming from Zenith, but I don't know if that was just hope from the community or anything official. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear if anyone has any info there. I would slap, I would swap out my clasp in a heartbeat if there was an
Yeah,
option.
I'll find out. So I met Romain on the night. He's the chief product officer at Zenith. So maybe I'll message him and ask if
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
the
yeah,
class.
yeah.
But you know they produce less than 20,000 pieces a year as well. It's quite amazing how little low the production numbers are.
Mhm.
Yeah, we had a great event with Zenith earlier in the year. Um, and then we got to see all the novelties, and we went to see we saw them at Watches and Wonders as well. And had a tour of the stand and whatnot. Yeah, I'm really excited. Next year I might try and get to the manufacturer and do the tours there. And I don't own any, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
huge fan. At some
I've
point
heard
I'll
the
meet him.
manufacturer tour is amazing because obviously the great story with the Zenith Attic and everything else. It's a fascinating story.
Yeah, we've got a lot of Zenith enthusiasts and collectors in the club, so which is great.
Yeah, I love it.
Awesome.
And it
Um,
was weirdly with the Chronomaster Sport. I've just got the classic white dial CMS with the black bezel. When I started getting interested in watches, I really didn't like it. I didn't like how it looked at all. And the Chronomaster Sport is for me anyway, it's an example of how you can just either be wrong or your tastes can change so much. Like, had you asked me when I started, what do you think? I'd be like convinced that I don't like it, and I could tell you 1,000 ways why I don't like it, and I'd be convinced that that would never change. But it did, and now I love it. So odd, so
Yeah.
odd. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean it's the same. Even getting a piece on the wrist, quite often you can have an opinion of it. I mean, when I saw pictures of the white stuff, I thought, nah, it's not me. I wouldn't be wearing a white watch. But then I put it on, and I was immediately my mind was changed. But yeah, your taste change as well. You know, things can grow on you. Um, yeah,
yeah, that's why we run so many events so people can come
yeah.
and
And that
shock
and that's
shock themselves.
isn't that
So,
also why there is no such thing as a complete collection? Is that I think that's also true, right?
yeah,
Just
yeah, I
one
mean,
more watch.
I've been moving things on this year, really. You know, with deliberate. You know, I'm trying to get things out that I just feel I'm past.
yeah.
You know, and just get them on eBay and move them out, and then make some space for some new stuff. And then people are like, "Well, what are you going to buy?" And I'm like, "Well, I haven't really thought about it. I'm making the space, and now I can start enjoying what am I going to get? You know, will I get something at the show in November? Will I save up and get something, get a bigger piece next year? Who knows?" The main thing is to raise some cash and get excited about searching. But I think we're at the top of the hour, so we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Darren, for
No,
coming
you're
on and
welcome.
talking to us. It's very exciting. I look forward to seeing how the journey goes. People can find you at sharewatches.com. Very straightforward and time and tide, as you said, which is great. And at the Manchester show, which is coming up this November, if people are in the UK and would like to meet Darren and your son,
Yeah.
uh, amongst the 40 plus exhibitors we've got this year. So yeah, thanks again. Thank you, everybody, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks,
Great to see
everyone.
you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Dan.
Cheers.
Cheers,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.